Okay, let's try doing this. People who are not in the partner, you need to get some partner, or you have to imagine it yourself. Okay. Step one, you had a conflict, and conflicts are part of your life. You'll find them everywhere, every moment. And you know, conflicts, most often, the moment we say conflict, we look at people as like somebody shouting at us, somebody is angry on us, and the conflict means anger. Conflict means negative behavior. Conflict means I hate you. You don't listen to me. And this is a kind of thought process that we have been growing up. We have been having conflict as a negative behavior pattern. So let's try to understand, why do we even get to conflict? What is the sources of conflict? Why do you get into conflict? So I want you to turn around to your partners or think about people who are quiet, silent, one person. If the person whom you try to convince did not come to your place, go ahead, walk up to that person, and then it's okay if they're not on the video. Just turn to them and then ask them, why did you both have a conflict? Or was there any conflict at all? So go ahead, have some open conversation. 1 minute time for you to talk about, was there a conflict between you both, and why there was a conflict? What is the source of conflict? Remember one and go ahead. I want you to go ahead, discuss. And I'm assuring you, in the next 30 minutes, you're going to get a lot of insights about yourself. Yeah, you're going to remember this session. When was the last conflict? And people who are quiet, single, you can go find somebody in the room or take a sheet of paper and then start making some notes in the notepad or somewhere so that you can reflect on. When was the last time you had a conflict, and why did that conflict happen? Okay, let's get back. And here is the first message that I would like to give you. Of all the many conflicts that we see, I'm going to focus on people conflicts, the relationship conflicts. That is what is the focus. And as a Scrum Masters, we know in the office we deal with a lot of people, and people is the more focused stuff. So here, I'm going to focus on this. Most often you will notice this. This is called as automatic listening. So we do a lot of automatic listening. So what happens is, something happens in our relationship or with us, and immediately we have a reaction. You will have a reaction for it. The moment you look at a reaction for what happened, you make a judgment. You've already made a judgment because that reaction gave you a judgment. And this judgment, you have made a judgment. Now you need to create a story of it. So you will go create a story for it. So till now, what has happened? Till now, what has happened? An event took place. You have a reaction to it, or you observe a reaction to it, and then you make a judgment. You came up with a story. Remember, this is your story. Now, immediately after the story, you need to prove that you're right. And then you start searching for evidences. So you will do a automatic selection of those events, those words, those sentences between relationship, which will result in a positive evidence that supports your story. You will discard all the other evidences or other proofs. So you'll always go selectively picking up those things that make up your story so that you can tell the story and show the proof. And then what happens? You predict the future. I told you this is what is going to happen. I knew about you. I know what you are doing, blah, blah, blah. And then you predict the future. I know you will not listen to me. And of course, something else happens. And you will immediately connect your future to that and say, oh, see, I told you this is going to happen. And this is exactly what you did. And the cycle goes around. And you know where the conflict starts with the human behavior? At every stage. Because this is your reaction, or this is your judgment, your story, your evidence, and the other person who's sitting right next to you, they have their own automatic listening. They have their own circle here. They also have a similar stuff going on in their mind. And that is why you have a conflict now. They have their story, you have your story, they have their selective proofs, you have your selective proof, and eventually it gets into a point where both of you have proofs, then who's right? We fall into a conflict. Now here is a point. When you are in a conflict, have you tried fixing this conflict? Have you tried to fix this conflict? Think over. I'm going to give you a few moments time to think over. Did you have a plan, or did you try to do something to avoid a conflict when this kind of situation happened? You say like, no, 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 hold on. This is not what it is. This is not the story. What you're saying is false. Did you try fixing it? And was it easy for you? Think over. Because the other person also has the proof. The other person also has the details like how you have. It's very difficult. Okay, I'm going to pause now. I want you to turn back to your partner, or if you're doing it yourself, I want you to think about the instance where you had a conflict and then write down, during your conflict, did you really have a story? Did you have a proof for that story? Was that story from your side? I'm going to keep this up. So please go ahead, think about it. 1 minute reflection time. Okay, let's look at this. If you have discussed, did you have a story and did you try to fix it? What were the obstacles that you saw? So let me just write it down. Some of the obstacles that you might have seen. I'm sure you would have tried to talk about it and you would have tried to convince the person, but this is what happens. There's a lot of obstacles for your communication. And what obstacles comes to your communication is this. You get into the biases due to the language. If it is not a same language person, if you're trying to have a conversation, I'll give you a simple example. At your family, you talk a mother tongue, but when you're angry, you switch your language to English and you say something, and your parents or somebody who's right next to you or the person gets into that language bias and you say, hey, hold on, I don't understand what you're speaking. Why are you talking to me like this? And because there's a language barrier. So you would have formed some issues here. You might be talking with respect to some filtering. That means, as I said, selective filtering, selective topics. So you took a bias of, okay, the proofs of your story. So you might be talking only for that, and that could be becoming an obstacle for you to solve the problem, the conflict. You could be having a selective perception. The selective perception is like, you don't want to listen to the other side. You want to just listen on one part, and then you want to stick to that point. And that is where selective perception comes into picture, where you don't want to get onto the other side. Gender differences. How dare you tell me this? You know I'm strong. Yeah, gender differences. Information overload. You know, information overload is a situation where you tell too many things. In a conflict, you tell too many things. And I'm sure this would have happened. You want to resolve a conflict, and eventually you will start right from the, and just on a fun note, if the spouse gets into a conflict, husband and wife get into a conflict, the information overload starts right from the point when the person start looking at them before the wedding, and then to the wedding, and then all the way from that first day of the wedding till today, all the information will come over in the conflict resolution. Everybody, everything is coming up. So you'll say, hold on, 5-year-old story, why are you bringing it up now? Because that's important. That's a story proof that I have for my story. Emotional disconnect. Somebody is angry and you're laughing at them. Somebody is sad, you're making fun of them. I mean, there's a lot of things. A lack of source familiarity, knowing that what the person you're talking to is, differences in meaning. Yeah, this is something that I really I'm scared of as well. Because even dictionary has multiple meanings for every word. So people can pick up any word they want, anything that they feel like. Okay, differences. So a lot of things come in between you as an obstacle for you to communicate and resolve the problem. I want you to think over. Did any of these things come in between when you were trying to solve a conflict within your team member, or I mean within your partner or within your life? So think of that situation and talk to them. Pick pick the things that made you ineffective while you're solving the problem. Think over, write down. 30 seconds time for you to reflect on this. Interesting. As I said, this session is more of your thinking, your own analysis. Okay. Now let us get into the next part. I'm sure you would be looking at this and thinking like, there are some of these which I do, but that is not a problem because I have been very clear when I'm communicating. I've been very honest in what I'm trying to say. I was trying to solve the problem, but the other person was not willing to listen, and you're bringing in a lot of thoughts. And that is where I would like to bring in the next thought, which is along with these communication, you bring in what is called as cognitive biases. I mean, your whole objective of solving a conflict goes with a cognitive bias, which means you have your own agendas to solve in the conflict. You're not looking at just one part. You're looking at the whole cognitive biased ecosystem. Like you're now looking at, hey, I'm going to anchor the person. Anchoring is one of the cognitive bias where you tell the person or you lead the person in the direction they want you to come. I mean, you're leading them. So when you lead the person to your direction, obviously there is a conflict. Do you think the other person is willing to come over? No way. So you failed in the conflict resolution. So there's an anchoring coming up, and there's a attribution error. As I said, you're finding your own stories and reasons for the conflict. So what happens? You have your own attribution error. People will not agree to your story. They will not agree to your reasons. You have self-serving bias. That means, okay, in this conflict, I have to make sure that it is benefit for me. So you're going to get this all these things in your thought process. Self-biasing bias, biased frame references. It is biased. Why is it always I have to agree for your statement? I mean, believe me now, Karan, you have got your brother next to you. I hope so. Next time he calls you, and if you don't go, sit right next to him. God save you. Yeah, he's going to come back and say, what the hell? I called you and I was there right next to you. And when I call you, you're not there. You're going to say, no, 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 that was a conference. This is just a game that you're playing. I will not. Conference does not matter. Game does not matter. I called you. You did not come. It's a frame of reference. So you get that. And then the confirmation bias. So confirmation bias is where you always get into a point where, yeah, I know this is what is going to happen. You pick up the event and go through that saying that, look, I have a confirmation on what is happening. So confirmation bias, assumption based on premising, all these things. There are a lot of cognitive biases that come into picture. I'm going to pause for a while. Yes, if you had found something here, effective communication is blocking you, I want you to think over. Did you start your communication which blocked you for being effective? Was that a result of your biases that you carried? Did you have some bias in your thoughts? Was that what creating a blockage for you and the other person to have a conflict resolution? Think about it. Hmm. Now let's look at the next one. I'm hoping that you're realizing what is happening in your brain, in your thoughts. So now let's go to this. Many times what we feel is like, oh, there is a conflict. So the moment you say there is a conflict, what comes to your mind? The reason for a conflict between you and me. The reason for a conflict between you and me is the issue at hand. Hmm. The issue in hand is a conflict. How many of you, I want you to switch on your video so that we can see, how many of you have felt, yeah, the conflict is the issue in hand, nothing else. How many of you have felt that? And how many of you have tried to solve the issue in hand? You want to raise your hands and wave? You're focused on the issue in hand? Yeah, think over. Many people think that, okay, we're going to focus on the issue because that issue created a problem. But you'll be surprised. The issue is just a surface. It just happened to you. You just saw that issue. But you know what is the underlying step? Below this, the conflict could be because of the personalities that you carry. And you will be talking about the issue. You will be talking about the issue, but your partner will be talking about the personality trail that you are showing. You are talking about the issue, the other person is focused on the personality trail, and they are saying that, no, this is what you did. This is what is the kind of a person you are. So you are saying, hold on, I'm talking about this issue, but you're going to get the answer that it's a personality trail, the personalities that you carry. And let's assume that you get into the personality. Okay, I am like this. I speak in loud voice. Yeah, you know that. I'm like this. In that case, what happens? Do you think this conflict will get resolved here? No. It gets into the next step where you bring in emotions. Now you will have all the emotions. So you feel like, oh, you're showing different emotions, being anger, making fun of, a lot of emotions, being sad, being uh, lonely, a lot of emotions you'll show. And do you think emotions is blocking you from the conversation, from the conflict resolution? No. Soon you will realize each person has different interests, needs, and desires. The desires are different. I'll give you a simple example. Very recently, there was a conflict. Okay. The conflict was simple. We are at home. So let's go out and have some food outside. And what is your natural response? Hey, it's a COVID situation. Let's not go out and risk ourselves. Uh, every time I ask you to go out, you're always giving me a reason, one or the other, which means my interest is different, the other person's interest is different, we get a conflict. And unless our conflicts, the needs and interests are in the same way, you're not going to focus on this. I'm going to pause here. I want you to reflect on this. Did any of these things come in between when you were trying to solve the last conflict? Think over. You know, conflict resolution, I always say it starts from yourself. First, you have to be prepared for a conflict resolution. Okay, the next one, the, the perception and the self-esteem that we carry. Hey, you never want to give up. You want to keep up to your self-esteem. And that also has a problem. Yeah. Then let's go to the next one. Hidden expectation. I mean, the problem that we are discussing is different, but the hidden expectation is different. The conversation is somewhere else, but the expectation is somewhere else. And hence, the conflict does not get resolved. You feel like, hey, you wanted me to take out, I took you out. Then why are you so angry still? Because the hidden agenda is still not satisfied. So your conflict is still not resolved. Okay. I'm going to ask you, can you guess the last one? Why most of the conflicts, especially in relationship, does not get resolved? Can you think of
Arrogance.
which one? Abhilash?
Arrogance.
Arrogance. That
I
comes
guess
under
ego will
emotions
be
and
there.
personalities.
If there is ego,
Ego.
definitely be no resolution.
Ego comes in self-esteem. What could be the other? And I am sure when I say this next answer, you will go like answer is most of the conflicts does not get solved because existing from the past, causing the current problem to surface to that level. You know, you are thinking that we are trying to solve this problem, but you don't know there is a hidden problem that is still not resolved, and the person who is getting into conflict is trying to solve problems right from here, but you're trying to solve the problem on the surface. I mean, have you felt like that? Let's say husband and wife or spouse get to a conflict, or a relationship get into a conflict. They will try to say, I mean, you are in a conflict resolution. You'll feel like, okay, if I solve this particular issue, I'm good. I should be able to go through. But then that person has an intention of solving all the hidden problems. They don't want to fix this, but they want to get this into your conflict resolutions. So they want to get that into conversation. Thing of this is, you know how much of the impact this it does when your conflict resolution and the problem statements. It goes like this: the amount of barrier the past hidden problems create is huge, and the actual problem at hand right now is a very small portion of a bigger conflict. So now here is a question: every time you had a conflict, did you actually focus on the issue in hand, or was the conflict failing because you had the past unresolved issues, hidden expectations? And if you see, as you go down, it is becoming bigger and bigger, and the contributions of these things are much more deeper. These are much more deeper. Now the first point: if at all you want to solve a conflict, if at all you want to resolve a conflict, now think over. Is your interest to solve the issue, or is your interest to solve the hidden expectations, unsolved problems, self-esteem problems, all these things, and then come to the problem at hand? Every time, this is a lesson. Every time you go out, walk out without solving a problem, without solving a conflict, it is adding to a future conflict. Every time you don't, it adds to us in the relationships. That is very, very important for you. Now let us go to this. Most of the people, how do you respond to a conflict? Let's pause. Let me pause. You wanted to have this issue discussed. That is what is your point. But then the person who is talking to you, or the other person, they get all the way to the hidden expectations, unsolved problems, esteems, personal interest, all these things. So what is your natural response to a conflict? If there is a conflict, what is your natural response? Turn around and ask the person, how do I respond to a conflict between us? How do you respond to a conflict between us? Go ahead. Think about it and then identify what is your natural response to a conflict. What's your natural response to a conflict? Hmm. Okay. At this point of time, you know, if there are people able to conflict within yourself and reflect, I'm sure you would be responding to the conflict that we are talking about. That itself is a conflict. It's called as conflict with self. So you're conflicting with self. And let's go to the next one. What's the next one? How would you respond to a conflict? You're responding to a conflict like this. Interestingly, most of the people, most of the people you will see will get into a denial mode. Ah, there is no conflict. It's okay, leave it, man. Chodo, it is not a conflict. There is no conflict. Yeah, everything goody goody. Okay, okay, fine. Don't tell me anything. We are happy. Good. That means we get into a point where our natural response to a conflict is to deny that there is a conflict. We're going to say there is no conflict. Internally, we know deny that there is a conflict, the issue gets unresolved, and this is going to act in future. So if you deny there is a conflict, you're actually inviting more trouble in future. Now, but that is one way people respond. The next one, they get into a consensus. What is a consensus? Consensus is like, I am happy, you're happy. Let's do something which is okay to both of us. So let's be happy. That's it. Next, let me given. What is this given? A simple example of given is, okay, I surrender. Why? We have been having a lot of conversation all the while. You have given me a lot of GAN and lot of things. I have been arguing with you. There is no point in arguing with you. I know there is a problem. You know there is a problem, but there is no point in arguing. Let me surrender. That means, okay, boss, you win. Don't worry. Okay. Withdrawal, it's the same thing. I surrender. But here, initially you say that there is a conflict. Initially you will say, yes, there was a conflict. But then after a lot of GAN giving, a lot of fighting, a lot of things, you will eventually turn your plate and then say, ah, no, don't worry. There is no conflict. Which means initially you thought there is a conflict and you start talking. But the conversation goes in such a direction that you don't want to continue this. You want to just end up. So you'll say, ah, it's okay. There is no conflict. Or you will start showing overpower. Meaning you will start showing your power with respect to your position, power with respect to your age, power with respect to your muscular strength, and you'll start showing the power to show that, look, I'm stronger than you. So you need to respect my strength, and you'll try to suppress them. That's another natural way of doing it. Okay. But if you look at the kids, this is all like more adults behavior. If you look at the kids, you know how the kids respond? The kids respond like crying, shouting, hitting. That's their natural way of conflict. Now, what should we do? We need to resolve a conflict. How do we resolve a conflict? For resolving a conflict, we get into conflict resolution technique. How have you resolved your conflict, or how have you thought about a conflict? Remember, all these while we were talking about different behavior patterns a team member or a person could have. Now let us look at the conflict itself. So what is a conflict going to be? The conflict is going to be like you can try to avoid a conflict. That is what is the denial. So if you try to resolve a conflict by avoiding, you're actually creating a lot of problems, which means you deny the existence of a conflict and withdraw from it. This is not going to solve the problem, but temporarily you're going to go ahead and say, it's okay, there is no problem. Think twice before you avoid a problem. Now, why should we avoid a problem? Maybe because you value the relationship more. You feel that the discussion that we are having is not so much importance. So you want to just get rid of this particular situation. Okay, avoid and then say there is no problem. Don't worry, you win. Or we get into a accommodative mode where how many times have you suppressed your interest in support of others people? That's your next step. You accommodate. So either you avoid or accommodate. What is the difference between avoiding and accommodating? In avoiding, you're running away from fixing the problem. In accommodating, you're getting into a thought process of, I am happy, you're happy. Let's be like this. Okay. Then comes collaborative. What do you mean by collaborative? Like how we have a smiley collaboration. Here, you work towards, okay, let's solve. There is a problem, let's solve it. Let's fix it instead of running away. Let us go ahead and talk. So you both of you will look towards the solution. The interest is now towards solving the problem. Both of us are happy. Now this is where you will say, okay, if you listen to me, I will give you this. If you do this, I will do something else. So you get into that compromise, the collaborative way of solving. Then comes the compromise. What is the compromise? Compromise is, okay, I'm going to agree for something, you're going to agree for something. So let's do that way. So both of us are together, so trying to solve a problem, but is the problem solved? No, but we will accept whatever is the available solution. Whatever is available solution, we'll accept that and we'll stay with that. You're happy, I am happy. The solution is just sufficient for us to fix it. And then comes the next one, compete. What do you mean by compete? You're not at all in the position to resolve the conflict by any of these means. You want to win. You want to defend your position. So it goes to such an extent that no, I don't care what you say. This is what I do. You are wrong, I am right. It's okay, I made a mistake. No, you are wrong, I am right. So you are not interested in any other way of conflict resolution. You're only interested in one way of conflict resolution. And that is what is compete mode. Now, if you see this in all the four benefited. Now, which technique did you use to resolve your conflicts? Think about it. Think about a situation that you had, the last conflict you had. Which of these conflict resolution technique did you use? Take a moment, think about it. And think over, if you had used any other technique, would that help you? Let's say you try to accommodate. Instead of accommodating, if you had tried to collaborate, would have that helped you? If you had competing, if you had collaborated, would that help you? Think about it. Think what behavior change you could have done. Okay, I'm going to focus on the last one so that we don't take away more time on this. I'm sure you would be interested in the conflict because every day there is a conflict. Every moment we deal with conflicts. You cannot run away with conflicts. So how do we convert a conflict into an opportunity? Yes, there is a conflict. We know there is a people involved. There are relationships involved. So how do we resolve a conflict? In order to resolve a conflict, you go with certain things. First thing, you educate yourself. The most important part is people forget that there is a conflict. People don't want to fix that conflict. They deny that there is an existence of a conflict and there is a need for fixing a conflict. Educate yourself. Conflicts are natural. Conflict is natural. It is there. It is part of our life. Do not run away from conflict. It is good. Conflicts are good. Get this on your thoughts. Once you have this conflicts are good kind of education, the culture that you bring in, the next step that we are doing is set the expectation. What do you mean by setting the expectation? You talk to the other person and try to set the expectation. Hey, let us keep away all our biases. Let us keep away all our conflicts in the communication, in the different way of thinking, our hidden agendas. Let us be very transparent and let us choose a win-win situation. So you set an expectation. What do you expect? What is your expectation from the other person? So what is that you expect from this? So you set that expectation. Hey, look at this. You are like this, but I'm expecting you to be like this. This is my expectation. Set the expectation clear. When you have your expectation clear and when you communicate that expectations, you know, this person is also going to communicate their expectations. So you are clear on what is the expectation among you. Then comes the next step, which is you're going to go ahead and communicate effectively through the expectation and through the conflict. So that is how you turn the conflict into an opportunity. Now, what is happening here? When you communicate effectively, remember, you're going to remove all the communication barriers that we spoke about. Biases, cognitive biases, the language, the perception, avoiding the conflict, a lot of personality. So you're going to communicate effectively. That means you're now going to not look at the whole mountain. You're only going to look at this area, which is actual conflict, the issue. So let's discuss on the issue in hand. And then you go to the next step. There is a conflict. You know there is a conflict. What is your next step? The moment you realize there is a conflict, go ahead, act on it. Don't be quiet. Don't be silent. If you notice that there is a conflict, go talk about it. And what is your intent of quickly acting on this conflict? The intent of acting on this conflict is to solve, is to convert that into an opportunity where your relationship's going to be healthy. And why is that important? You know, if you act quickly, you're going to be emotionally, mentally, and physically healthy. Emotion, mental, and physical. You're going to be sound. If you don't resolve a conflict, you're going to raise your BP. You're going to get headache. Your body language will change. Your emotions will change. And you're going to fall into a lot of problems, a lot of conflict. Remember, your goal is to turn that into an opportunity. What do you mean by opportunity? Opportunity means it is good for you. So how do you turn the conflict into good for you? You can turn this by this mindset. Always look for what is a win-win situation. Instead of going and saying that I have a power, I'm here to win over you, if you start thinking about win-win situation and try to solve that with a acceptable answers between you, you're going to resolve the conflict. And by doing so, what is going to happen? End of the day, conflicts results in relationship. And when we value relationship, we are happy, healthy, and will be much more supportive. We will be much more empathetic with our partner, with our people around. Remember, everyone, we need to be with the relationship and we need to value the relationship, and conflict either can make or break your relationship. It is up to you to choose whether the conflict will help you make up the relationship or the conflict is breaking up the relationship. Choice is yours. Remember, conflict is with you, so you are part of the problem. You decide to make it, break it, and how do you handle the conflict is all I wanted to say. Be effective, be focused, don't leave any conflict unresolved. We are humans. We are bound to make mistakes. We are bound to make choices which are not good for everybody, but then we need to respect each other. That is what I would like to say, and then pause here. I'm hoping that your relationships will be good by solving all the problems or issues that will come up. Why did I pick up this topic for this conference? The answer is I wanted to make sure that the people with whom I work and people who work with their families, with everybody. So if I go to office, I meet you. And if you are having any conflict within your personal life relationship, the office work is not going to be good. As a scrum master, as a coach, I would like to make sure that everybody is good at relationships so that we can be better people at work and we can achieve our dreams. Thank you so much for listening. I'm okay to let's take up some questions if you have, and the time is there. I'm done with the topic. I hope you, yes, there is a conflict. I'm not saying, I'm not going to wish you conflict-free life. I wish you conflict life, but you hope you convert that conflict into your opportunity. Looking at yourself, looking at what is your behavior pattern, what is other person's behavior pattern, looking at what are the different ways that I can resolve the conflict, look at different ways and then try to build up that relationship. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much.